The only thing that changed between class 350 and 351, and this can be controversial, the mandatory COVID vaccine. It's the only variable that changed. Now, let me qualify that with, I do not want to get into the politicized debate about all the things that happened during COVID. However, what both sides of the aisle have absolutely agreed upon is that the vaccine produces fatigue, as does the virus, sometimes long fatigue. It happens. Having had the vaccine or the virus both times and the vaccine, I can tell you, yeah, it produces a lot of fatigue in me as well. So what's interesting is the mandate for the vaccine came down for class 350, but it was the week before they started Hell Week. So we said, no, we're going to waive that. That's way too close. It's way too much risk. We don't know what's going to happen. So we let them do it after Hell Week. So 351 was the very first class that we then gave the COVID vaccine to as they started first phase right beforehand. What's interesting about that too is all the attrition data for classes 351, 352, which is where Kyle died, and 353 show that the majority of the attrition happened within the first 48 to 72 hours of those classes, which was another anomaly that was different from everything we'd seen in the past. What kind of makes sense when you think about the fact that these guys were just really fatigued. You gave them a shot that fatigued them and then expected them to perform in some of the most difficult training as we dropped the hammer on day one of first phase, and then we acted surprised when they all quit. I can't remember which class it was, but one of them, over 100 people quit within 72 hours. The helmets had lined the corner. We weren't even done with week one. I brought in a PhD because I was losing my mind. I'm like, I need you to help me. Like, what is going on? And he said, Brad, I'm telling you, I've looked at this stuff for 14 years. I've studied every single soft branch and selection assessment and training. When this kind of thing happens, it's usually cadre running amok. I was like, come look, please, tell me. Tell me I'm taking crazy pills. He's like, I'm bringing my bias with me. Just so you know, I said, bring your bias. He walked away and said, it's not your cadre. At the time, we hadn't isolated it down to that one variable, but he had a lot of other variables he added to the mix, which were absolutely contributory as well. So it's just a false narrative that we were just ramping up training. The data shows it. It's the only variable that changed. What's interesting, too, is the attrition starts dropping off a few classes later. Well, why? Well, that would make sense as now people are entering the Navy, going to boot camp, getting their shot at boot camp, and having 12 weeks to bleed off the effects of the fatigue before they check into BUD/S, then do the 7 weeks of prep, and then start first phase. So it makes sense the attrition would start spiking down right about the time I changed command, by the way.